Welcome to the Week 4 Fantasy Football Weekly Roundup with Ruben and Ryan. We're here to give you some of the best players to start for your DraftKings Weekly Fantasy League. Ruben's going to get us started off with quarterbacks, and before Ruben gets started, don't forget that it is bye-week season, so you have less players to choose from, so the talent pool is a little bit thinner than it is in a normal full week. So Ruben, get us started with quarterbacks.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. I'm going to start out here with Aaron Rodgers at $8,200. It's the lowest value that you'll probably see for him all year. He's playing at Chicago. You've seen what has happened with the Bears secondary. I think you can both run and pass against the Bears, and so I see a big week from Aaron Rodgers, as many fantasy owners have been disappointed thus far in his performance. I also like Phillip Rivers. He's going at $7,700. You saw what Andrew Luck just did against Jacksonville. So, yes, they're playing the Jaguars at home. He may not get many stats in the second half, but he most definitely will in the first half. Plus, if you look at the Chargers, their running backs are injured, and so I think they're going to pass more than normal. And then Ben Roethlisberger at $6,900. He's relatively inexpensive. He's playing against Tampa Bay. You saw what the Falcons did against the Bucs on Thursday Night Football last week. The Bucs are giving up a 77% clip in passing completion percentage, and so I think that Roethlisberger is going to have a very good day. Oh, hold on, this just in. I am checking my news feed here, straight in from Adam Schefter concerning Ben Roethlisberger. Apparently, Commissioner Roger Goodell has he's suspended Ben Roethlisberger. Apparently, Ben Roethlisberger is out of action for 6 weeks. However, Roethlisberger seems to be relieved, as it's only in reference to football. With that being said, I think Big Ben's going to have a good week, maybe both off and on the field. And then a couple other names I want to throw out is Tony Romo for $6,700, hosting the Saints. The Saints' defense has not been overly impressive thus far. And then if Jake Locker is healthy at Indianapolis, the Colts are very susceptible to giving up the big play. One particular stay awake this week, kind of hard to say, is Nick Foles, $8,000. He's way too expensive. Granted, playing at San Francisco, the 49ers do not have the same defense that they've had the last couple of years, but they are not going to fall to 1-3. I believe they're going to have a good game against the Eagles. Okay, how about running backs? What do you think, Ryan?
Top tier running back as far as price wise, I have Le'Veon Bell playing at home against Tampa Bay. He's at $7,400. Bell this year has reminded me a lot of LaShawn McCoy from last year. Just looks like he's playing at a different speed. Always a threat for over 100 yards rushing. Usually going to give you about 3 to 5 catches per game. So I expect him to have somewhere around 120 total yards. Look for him to get a touchdown this week. So a really good play at $7,400. 3 mid-level guys I'm looking at this week is Lamar Miller playing against the Raiders. It's at Oakland. He's coming in at $6,200 with Sean Moreno being banged up. Miller had over 100 yards last week and three catches. So look for him to get a majority of the carries this week against a poor Oakland rush defense. So look for him to get over 100 total yards. And again, those 3 to 5 catches really add up in a point per reception league like DraftKings. Eddie Lacy at Chicago at $5,600. You talked about the Bears' defense. They are a little bit weak against the run and the pass. Lacy's been playing horribly this year. He got a concussion in week 1, had some fumble problems, but I think the Packers have talked a lot about since their loss against Detroit that they want to get the running game going again. So look for Lacy to get fed the ball a lot against the Bears. And then Donald Brown playing at home against Jacksonville, the worst defense in the league. You saw what the Colts running game did against them last week. At $5,400, he's a great value. With the other top 2 running backs for San Diego being hurt, he had over 30 carries last week against Buffalo. So look for him to get a ton of work. He may not have a lot of yards, but those carries could lead to a touchdown. And, again, they use him out in the passing game as well with Woodhead being out. What about you for the receivers?
Okay, let's go with Calvin Johnson. Yes, he is the most expensive receiver at $8,500. However, he's playing the Jets. The Jets, I believe, have a horrible pass defense. Thus far, they've given up the 4th most points in fantasy to opposing teams. There tends to be a natural ebb and flow to even star players production like Calvin Johnson last week. He didn't have a horrible game by any means, but he didn't score. I think he's going to rebound with at least one score, perhaps two, this week. Antonio Brown, $7,800 versus the Bucks. I mentioned already that Roethlisberger is probably going to have a good week. So too will Antonio Brown. Think about it. His floor is very high. He's had no fewer than 90 yards in every game this year, and he seems to get targeted. He receives more than 10 targets per game. Ben Roethlisberger is always looking for him as his safety valve. And then Mike Wallace, $6,000 at Oakland. In his last two games against the Raiders, he's gone for over 100 yards in each. He has scored in each. Oakland's defense, even though they looked halfway decent against the Patriots last week, their defense is not good. And so I think that Mike Wallace, who continues to receive 10, 12, 13, 14 targets per game, will at least get 6 or 7 catches, and he always has the ability to break one off. A couple other names I want to throw out. Even though he struggled last couple of weeks, Cordarrelle Patterson, $5,600 against the, I believe, mediocre Falcons defense. And then either Kendall Wright or Justin Hunter. I believe one of the two Titans receivers, if Jake Locker is healthy, will have a good game against the Colts, because, once again, the Colts have been very susceptible to the deep pass and to just big plays in general. One particular stay away is Brandon Marshall. Now, if you see that he's practicing fully by Thursday or at least Friday, then forget this, but he looked very gimpy against the Jets, and so until he is at full health, I would stay away from him considering his price. Okay, what do you think about tight ends, Ryan?
I think with the tight end position, either you have to go big with Jimmy Graham, that has the most expensive tight end, around $7,500, or you have to find a mid-tier or a cheaper tight end to sort of save some money and spend it at other positions. So if you don't have the money for Graham, I think some 3 great values at the tight end position. One would be Delaney Walker playing at Indianapolis at $4,900. The Colts simply cannot cover the tight end. They got torched by Zach Ertz. They got burned by Julius Thomas. And yes, those guys are top-tier tight ends. But Walker had a great game in Week 2. He's good for about 5 to 7 catches this week against the Colts, 60 to 75 yards, and he's always a good target in the red zone. So look for Walker to have a good game. Antonio Gates playing at home against Jacksonville at $4,400. You saw last week Jacksonville couldn't cover the 2 Colts tight ends. They have a horrible defense. Gates had a big game against Seattle in Week 2, only had 1 catch in Week 3. Look for him to have a bounce-back game, be more in the range of about 5 to 6 catches, maybe about 60 to 80 yards receiving. And then my bargain bin tight end this week is Eric Matthews' favorite, Brandon Myers, for Tampa Bay. He does play for Tampa Bay. Some of you may not know that. They play at Pittsburgh. He comes in at $3,200. Pittsburgh has a ton of injuries at the linebacker position. And so Myers is getting about 3 to 5 catches the first 3 weeks. Look for him to get maybe 4 to 6 catches this week, around 50 yards, which is a decent value at $3,200. How about defenses this week, Ruben?
Okay, the first defense you must consider, and I believe a lot of people will be considering, is the Chargers. The Chargers played Jacksonville at home. They made the R-Skins look like the '85 Bears. They made the Colts look like the 2000 Ravens. Jacksonville is just terrible. Bortles might be better than Henne, but playing at home against Jacksonville, there is no way that can burn you. And at $3,100, they're relatively cheap. How about the Dolphins at the Raiders? Once again, the Raiders is not an offense that you have to worry about through the air or on the ground. The Dolphins, even though they gave up over 30 points to the Chiefs last week, they actually had a good fantasy game. Had a couple turnovers, a safety, 5 sacks. And so I believe they are a safe bet to at least get you a few points, and I think they can have a great game in Oakland. So at $3,100, they're pretty good value. The Lions front 7 is really strong. They're playing the Jets in New York. However, Geno Smith is a turnover machine. He's committed 5 turnovers thus far. If you watch the Monday night game against the Bears, you saw how he makes very, very unwise decisions, let's say. Even though he's committed 5 turnovers, he could easily have 7 or 8 at this point. And so at $3,000, I believe the Lions are a good bet. And then consider the Panthers. The Panthers, in reality, are a top 5 defense in the NFL. And at $2,900 at Baltimore, I believe it's the lowest price that you'll be able to get them all season. A couple stayaways here. The Falcons, $3,200. They're one of the more expensive defenses at Minnesota. The names Bridgewater and Asiata don't really scare you. However, I'm not impressed by the Falcons' defense, regardless of what they did against the Bucs last week. And then the Steelers. The Steelers' defense is depleted. Their secondary, or their linebackers and safeties, are banged up. At $2,900, they're kind of a middle-of-the-pack defense. However, I believe they're too expensive. And I believe Mike Glennon is a halfway decent quarterback and will be serviceable for Tampa Bay. And so I see actually a shootout in that Steelers-Bucs matchup. Concluding thoughts, Ryan?
I think this has just been one of those years where you really need to make sure that you check your lineups until the very last second. There seems to be always last-minute lineup changes. Guys are inactive. So even if you pick your players early on the Friday or Saturday, always check last minute on Sunday right before the 1 o'clock game start, because you never know who could be a last-minute scratch due to something that happened late on Saturday or something happened during warm-up. So this is just one of those weird years where I'd always check the very last second when you never know there could be a last-minute lineup change where you could find a great bargain for someone subbing in for a usual starter, and you could spend that extra money to upgrade a different position. Well, thanks for watching Week 4, and good luck with your DraftKings weekly fantasy leagues this week. Thanks for watching.